waiting to go live. And now it says we're live. So, welcome everybody to another WineShark Wednesday. It is I, your host, the WineShark. Hope we all are doing well, having another fantastic week here in our chilly December. We had a weird, I guess you'd call it a heat wave, but back in the weird 70s temperatures last week, but now we're back to a nice 53 degrees. Feeling like it at least has some last days of fall left in us before winter next week. So, anyway, things have been going very well. We've been kind of busy and doing shows and having people celebrate their holiday parties and things, which got me going on the idea of celebratory sparkly wine. Welcome, Mark. Yes, things were fine. We got a lot of a big blow here. The tornadoes and such weren't very close. They were a couple of miles out, and from a couple of other friends of ours as well. So I hope everybody was safe. Here we just got a lot of wind, and I'm pretty sure every leaf in the county is now on the sidewalk. So it wasn't so bad here in North Texas for me personally, but I hope anybody else wasn't impacted by some of this craziness that came down with this cold weather blast. But anyway, sparkling booze. This is definitely the season for sparkling wine. Usually around this time of year, I start talking about this again, specifically because of the New Year's Eve tradition. We tend to have a champagne or sparkling wine toast sometime during that evening to ring in the new year. But also I find that just in general celebrations, etc., we find, especially holiday parties and any given party throughout the year, sparkling wine tends to be featured quite a bit. So we're going to talk a little bit about the styles of sparkling wine just briefly and make some value statements that might help you out in choosing some things and getting you into the world of sparkling wine. So, and then of course for the grocery store grab, we're going to actually try some sparkling wine here. So that's going to be fun too. But to begin, we have to talk about, of course, the gorilla in the room, and that is champagne, arguably the world's most famous sparkling wine. And with that, there's a lot of reasons for that. Primarily, the fact of champagne has always produced some amazing high-quality wine. They've had a lot of experience and a lot of opportunity to perfect a wine that is grown in a very difficult place in the country to grow wine. In France, where Champagne is, it's almost at that level where it's a little bit too cold, and the grapes have to struggle a lot. And this produces some very hearty grapes that actually survive, although it means that from year to year, Champagne was notorious for not necessarily producing good wines in a given year. You might have an off year, you might have a great year. And this led to the tradition of them doing what we call non-vintage wines, where they blend together the products of one or more years to create a more satisfactory and elegant product. Vintage champagnes, when they do come out, are highly prized. When a year is so good and they actually slap a vintage label on it, it's considered a really cool thing, and they get extra dollar on the dollar. So the experience, the quality is something that makes champagne an amazing thing, and you absolutely should try some. However, being the biggest and most popular in the world, rather, being the top dog, has some negatives that come along with it. Primarily, it's overpriced. There is a lot of people who want champagne and not a lot of champagne out there. So as the years have gone by, champagne has exploded in price. Part of this, of course, is a victim of their own success. The champagne and the champenois who make champagne and run the champagne businesses have been very good in the last 100 or so years at marketing champagne to a world market. It has become the gold standard, and therefore it has the prestige it has, but that comes with a price. And I would actually make the argument here that it comes with a price that is not you get what you pay for necessarily. Oftentimes in the world, I really kind of believe, you get what you pay for. When you pay for quality products, you're usually getting a quality product. That is true of champagne to a point. However, at the bottom end of the champagne scale, I find that inexpensive champagne is not worth the price of its equivalent other sparkling wines from different regions. I mean, the greatest champagnes up there are truly a thing of beauty. However, when it comes to let's say the grocery store availability of certain brands, those brands, money for money, I think tend to be a lot of overpriced hype. Also, because of the demand for especially some of the best styles, there's a couple of different ways of making champagne, whether it's grower champagne or co-op champagne, things like that. we, the common person, doesn't get a lot of opportunity to try even the best styles. So what to be done is kind of the question. That is, even if you're going to spend if you're going to spend, say, 50, $75 a bottle on a bottle of champagne, I would argue that that money is better spent on some different styles. So we're going to actually start with Champagne's neighbors. We'll start with Crémant. Crémant, or sparkling wine that's made in the Champagne method that's not in Champagne. Okay, the word literally means creamy or bubbly, or that's kind of how they describe the bubble feeling in your mouth, the mousse of the sparkling wine. But Crémant wines are made in that same method. They're bottle conditioned in the method traditionnel, or champenois, if you prefer. And that means they have all the same flavors, all the same method, but generally at a lower cost. Styles within the country vary by region. So Crémant de Bourgogne is probably the closest to Champagne, simply because they share pretty much the exact same soils and the same grape styles. They also make them out of Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. Pinot Meunier being the other third grape that is lesser quantity in Champagne. But in Bourgogne, they make them almost identically. Now, if you go up to Crémant de Loire, Crémant d'Alsace, Crémant de Bordeaux, there are slightly different grapes being used. Or there are definitely different grapes being used, not slightly. There are different grapes being used. So the flavors can vary, and that can be a good thing. If you want to get away from Champagne's style and you want to get something different, lighter, more fruity, more floral, whatever it is, you can go to different places for Crémant and really enjoy sparkling wine at probably, I would say, quality for quality, about half the price you would. A good quality $20, $25 bottle of Crémant de Bourgogne, I think, easily competes with its $50 to $70 counterpart for just your average grown champagne. So when we're talking about the Moët and Chandons, etc., that you see in the grocery stores, you can get that same level of quality out of a Jean-Claude Bousset or Louis Bilot, something like that. So Italy, our next stop. Now they make different styles of wine, of sparkling wine in Italy. Most of us are familiar with Prosecco. Prosecco has become very popular in the last, I'd say, 15, 20 years, and is very widely available. It's inexpensive, light, and fun, but it's not the same as champagne. And I don't mean that it's a sparkling wine as well, but fact is, it is a different style. The Glera grape, which they use to make it, has much more floral notes. It's a lighter style, and it doesn't have the aging that champagne does, so it doesn't come off as nearly complex. That, by the way, is not a negative. That's just the style that it's made in. So it's lighter, more refreshing, more approachable, and just not it's a simple action movie versus a complex drama. You want a movie comparison. But you can get that same drama in Italy if you go to Franciacorta. Franciacorta is Méthode Traditionnelle style. It's Lee aged on lees in bottles, just like champagne. Therefore, it comes across with much more of those flavors, and it uses very similar grapes. So, Franciacorta is your Italian champagne equivalent. Prosecco is kind of a style all of its own. So that kind of gets me into the next style. The light styles include Prosecco, and then we go over to Germany, and they have Sekt, which is Riesling's sparkling wine entry into the ring here. That being said, it is a really nice example of lighter style in its own right. Riesling having the lighter fruit style and white floral aromatics on the nose. Sekt is easy, fun drinking, just like Prosecco, and usually, again, pretty inexpensive. $10, $15 a bottle. Easily get some good quality Sekt. Then you can go to Spain. Spain, again, has a foot in both camps, but they all come with the same name. Cava can be made in a style that's very similar to Prosecco, which is light, easy, and approachable. Also tend to be inexpensive. By the way, a lot of the reason that those wines are inexpensive is because they don't require that aging. The longer you hold on to wine, the more expensive it gets. You have to pay for the storage and the upkeep and the control and on basically making sure that product is going to be high quality. So that adds to cost, and that's part of the base reason why aged method traditional wines like Champagne, Crémant de Bourgogne, and even Reserva Cava can be made in that same style, where they do it bottle conditioned, yeast and resting on the lees in the bottle. The yeast cells gives it that bready, awesome sourdough rising biscuit kind of characteristic. You can get that same thing in Cava too. It's called Reserva. So depending on where you are and how the style is made, Cava can come in both light styles and complex styles. All right, and then not last, but next up, something that I think is very underrated, especially by the kind of the Illuminati amongst ourselves, and that is United States sparkling wine. Okay, sparkling wine from New York and California are amazing. Anybody that has the argument of, first off, one of the things I find that's just extremely amusing, although it's kind of a meme around, around the internet right now, because they've been making the twist on the phrase of it's only sparkling wine. It's sparkling wine, and it's from Champagne. It's from the Champagne region of France. Otherwise, it's just sparkling wine. Well, yeah, that's true. But that statement is also kind of hollow. It's only Chianti if it's from the Chianti region of Italy. It's only Bordeaux. It's from the Bordeaux region of France. It's only Mosel if it's from the Mosel region of Germany. You see the point here? Each one of the regions in the world has its own wines. That statement is just as equally true of Champagne. So that being said, the United States, specifically California, has had a very long history of their own, in the New World sense of wine production, of their own, of making sparkling wines. Champagne style was the big problem that got them kind of as becoming mortal enemies during their evolution. When California moved away from calling their wines by their old place names, they started calling them by their own grape types. This kind of set things apart. So now you have a lot of sparkling wine in and around Napa Valley specifically, oftentimes with names of champagne houses that you may well recognize. In fact, the champagne houses from Champagne were buying up land in California and making sparkling wine there because they thought it was so ideal. That alone should tell you that the quality is there. Not that they're just trying to buy land and sell wine to the locals. They believed very strongly that the quality of product that they could make was equal and awesome. So when you're looking at all the Krugs and the Chandons, etc., that's exactly what we're talking about. And finally, there's kind of the catch-all other category of other New World examples. Many countries that produce wine, in fact, most that I know, produce some sort of sparkling wine. However, most of them fall underneath the umbrella category of styles that we've already talked about. They either are imitating French style in the traditional method, or they're making a lighter, bubbly style, much more like Prosecco and Cava or Sekt. So you need to do your own research there and find out what their target is, what their goal is when they're making their wines, because I think that gives you a little better perspective on what it is that you should be expected to be drinking. But all in all, price point being what it is, the other countries outside, or basically everything that's outside Champagne, generally you're going to find an excellent sparkling product for a lot less cost. So while I absolutely endorse Champagne and the good stuff that's out there, it's not like it's a bad thing, but you got to know what you're doing to really get what you're paying for, and it's just an easy cheat to go around the corner instead. Oh, I see Betty popped in, said she didn't have any problems. That's good. I had a little power blip. I woke up and my stove was blipping, and I had to reset my internet. It was the worst impact of my storm, so I'm very thankful for that. Anyway, let's get on to our wine quiz for the day. We're going to get in here and from our Wine Wars game. So our Wine Wars here has 5 different categories, very similar to Trivial Pursuits. We've got Vine de Vino, which is all about growing grapes, making wine, and world wine production. We've got the Graposphere, which is about grape varieties, their wines, and their geography. We've got Wine Cellar, which is about selecting, storing, and tasting wine. Wine and Food, which is cooking with and dining with. Also about wine service is included in there. And then Court Culture, which is about wine people, businesses, arts, science, and general trivia. So we choose these. We'll see if we can't stump yours truly, the sommelier, here today. Well, all right. Question number 1. What is the term for vineyard practices, including vine spacing, trellising, shoot positioning, and leaf removal, that optimize grape quality and production? Ooh, that's a wordy description there. So what's the term, is the question, for all these practices? Basically, vineyard practices, vine management, trellising, leaf removal, optimizing grape quality and production. What is that word? There is a school for this, a very famous one in the University of California, Davis. And there are 2 words that often get thrown in there. Although, in fact, 3 good to know science words in the world of wine. Ampelography, which is the study of the types of grapevines. For many years was done by looking at their leaves. Now I think it's done much more by just genetic typing and matching. Enography, which is the study of the creation of wine and the processes that make it. And then finally, the answer to our quiz question, viticulture. That is the concept of how you grow grapes and bring them in as a crop. Oh, I'm way too complicated for this. They're simply saying that this is canopy management. Because vineyard practices, including vine spacing, trellising, shoot positioning, all those do have to do with canopy. It's true. But you know what? Canopy management, I would say viticulture as a whole, but I wasn't being specific enough, so good for me. All right, true or false? The Semillon grape makes the most renowned, long-lived, dry white wines of the lower Hunter Valley in Australia. The Semillon grape makes the most renowned, long-lived, dry white wines of the lower Hunter Valley in Australia. I'm going to say true. Semillon's a great grape. Yes, the answer is true. Now, the interesting part is I've never had a Semillon from the lower Hunter Valley, but I did a study on Australia I think it was last fall. And one of the things that they do is their blends in Semillon are really something to behold. Getting a hold of them here, at least at my local Total Wine, wasn't easy. Even when I searched on wine.com, finding some of their Semillon forward examples was tough. So I have had blends of theirs, but not some of their big dogs. So, all right. Where on the tongue will wine's sweetness best be discerned? On the tip, the back, or the sides of your tongue? Now, this is an interesting one because this is about perception, not let's see, what's the right word to use here? It has actually very little to do with your biology. It has nothing to do with your anatomy. All about perception, and that being how your brain processes signals. So is it the tip, the back, or the sides? The answer is they're going to say the tip. Just the tip. So we're taught in wine tasting that when we taste for actual sweetness, we feel it on the tip of our tongue. Many people for many years were taught that different parts of your tongue told you different things. Sweet on the tip, salty in the middle, bitter on the sides. That has been debunked as a theory of tasting. Your taste buds are homogeneous on your tongue. There is no difference between the ones at the tip, the ones at the sides, the ones at the back. However, your brain processes a lot of information, and sugar being such a easy process caloric thing, something that our little lizard brain goes, give me that. It's good for me. Makes easy food. That sweetness is the first thing we perceive, so therefore we feel it on the tip of our tongue because the beverage literally hits that part first. Okay? It's not like if you just took your wine glass and stuck the tip of your tongue and you go, ooh, this tastes very sweet. That wouldn't happen. So, well, the answer is to them, we got their answer correct. It's the tip. That is merely a sensory function, not a function of how your body is built. All right. Next up, what residue found on mishandled glassware will stop the formation of bubbles in sparkling wine? A perfect question for today. And a very important question for the beer world. This is why having your glassware, quote, beer clean, is very important. And if you go to a quality establishment, especially one that features beer, but I assume sparkling wine as well, although I don't know a place that does this specifically, this would be soap residue, petroleum residues. These cause the breaking of bubbles in your glass, and it fails to form. If it's in beer, it'll fail to form a head. Same thing with bubbles. Yep, soap residue. So soap and the petroleum products specifically. So usually what you'll see at a good beer bar is that they'll have a rinse that is specific for the soap residue after they wash them, and right before they'll take the glass, they'll turn it upside down in a water spigot and rinse it out with fresh water right beforehand. Helps make sure that glass is nice and clean. All right. And oh, this is a fun one. This is actually a trivia question I think I might get the answer to. These are usually the tough ones for me because they're kind of out of it. And we have, what winery's cork is inscribed ribbit? R-I-B-B-I-T, ribbit. This is one of those, first you have to abandon the rule that you want to avoid animals on the labels of your wine. There are actually a few pretty good iconic wines, specifically from California and specifically from Napa, that have animals on them that are all pretty prestigious wines in their own right. One is Stag's Leap. Stags don't go ribbit. The other is Duckhorn. Ducks don't go ribbit. The other is Frog's Leap. And Frog's Leap does go ribbit. Yeah, Frog's Leap Winery was the answer. You should definitely try their wines. I love their stuff. They're a high quality cab producer, Merlot, Chardonnay, kind of the class, the California Bordeaux Invitationals, and the horses of Bordeaux and Burgundy both, which is California specialty. So yeah, yep, Mark's got it right. Frog leap it is. So there's lots of things leaping, and apparently stags are leaping, frogs are leaping, many things are leaping in Napa. I think there was a joke in Willie Glickstern's book, The Wine Avenger, where he spoke. He was basically denouncing Chardonnay and oak and the overuse thereof in California specifically, and talking about slugs leap Chardonnay. Which, if you're from California and you know that the banana slug is a very common slug, if you're not familiar with the banana slug, think about a slug approximately the size of a small banana, that joke becomes even funnier. So, all right. Next up, the grocery store grab. For those of you not familiar with the concept, the grocery store grab is our attempt to get the best value per dollar out of wines found at non-specialty and non-big box retailers. That means we, out of necessity or convenience, may shop at the grocery store for our wines. That unfortunately means that we usually don't have a good staff to recommend things to. So if you're early in your wine journey and don't know a lot about wine, you may be really forced to rely on your own wine knowledge and that knowledge which is contained on the labels of wine. So our grocery store grab today is a drumroll, please. Oh, did I delete this? Ruh-roh. Looks like I killed my channel instead of... No, there it is. Aha! We've got Chandon, Blanc de Pinot Noir. So, those of you may remember from the famous Queen song, she keeps Moet and Chandon in a pretty cabinet, referring to Moet Chandon, one of the most famous champagne producers and grower producers from there. Well, guess what? This is one of those people I was talking about where Chandon is a house that moved out to California. They sent family out there, bought land, and have been producing wine in California for many, many years. This is 1958, was when the One World and Possibilities. Un monde and possibilité. But this is really kind of cool. What caught my attention about this, now we've done a review of the rosé of Chandon before. This is widely available at my grocery store, so it fits the thing. It fits the profile here. It says right on the label, exceptional sparkling wine. And they do a little twist on the French concept. They use Blanc de Pinot Noir. Now, normally you'd see it in France as Blanc de Noir, which means white wine made from Pinot Noir or black grapes. I mean, literally, the words literally mean white from black. This is white. But they will put in the extra grape name that they call it white from Pinot Noir, letting you know that this is a Pinot Noir-based wine. Gives people who may not know that champagne history a clear view into what's in the bottle. And I approve of that a lot. I think that's a good choice for them. It's be deliberate here. You're not just regurgitating French tradition. You're making your own sparkling product. Identify it well. It says on the front of the bottle too, méthode traditionnelle. It is made in the traditional method, meaning it has lees in the bottle. And then it says exceptional sparkling wine. And then here on the side, it said crafted by our own winemakers in California by blending grapes harvested at night. While that may sound kind of gimmicky, the reason that they harvest at night is for more consistent temperature control. The grapes get chilly, they maintain their acidity, and they bring them in from the harvest to the crush very quickly over at night. So, great front label on this, really like that. And then here in the back, we have Chandon, Blanc de Pinot Noir. At Chandon, we have been crafting the most exceptional sparkling wine since our foundation in Argentina in 1959. We form a passionate and bold community of winemakers located in unexpected lands from across Argentina, Brazil, California, Australia, China, and India. Obviously, they are expanding their New World presence dramatically. In California, Chandon harvests under the stars in the cool night air when the fruit expression is brightest and aromatics are protected. Chandon de Pinot Noir, or Blanc de Pinot Noir, is crafted by using grapes that have been immediately pressed to yield a golden or blanc wine. This lively cuvee showcases the red fruit and spicy notes of the grapes sourced from California's cool climate regions. Okay, very descriptive. I like the way that they describe what some of these words mean to tell you why it's important. For instance, they described the nighttime harvest, why that's cool. The only thing, they do say that this red fruit and spicy notes, that's all they're really giving me in the hint regarding flavor. I would still like a couple more flavor words out of this, so I would score this about a B-. A lot of good information there, but still not enough for a new wine drinker to go, what should I be tasting? But made in all the right ways, lots, not a thousand years of history here, but a champagne house that has much more history than that. I should look up how old Moet Chandon is, but it's one of the old big guys. So, all right. So with that being said, wonderful sparkler here. This has got the long running, or what's called string of pearls bubbles in it. On the nose, though, actually, that's the other thing. Let me talk about the color real quick. When you see a Blanc de Blanc next to a Blanc de Noir, when you see the one made from primarily Pinot Noir versus one made from primarily Chardonnay, when we're talking about champagne at least, or other styles of wine, Chardonnay grapes are still lighter than Pinot Noir grapes, even though it spends very little time in contact with its skins. I mean, literally only during the crush. It still has a slightly darker tint, right? And then it's white grape cousin. And you can kind of see that in this really pretty gold color it's got here. It's got this very burnished gold-esque color, which again promises a good, complex, full-flavored wine. On the nose, you can definitely smell the kind of fruit character here. It's interesting. Despite being made in a old world style, this definitely has new world aromatics. It's got a bit of pear or apple right up front. It's got the kind of juicy white fruit notes to it. Right, which is cool. It's kind of assertive. A lot of times, sparkling wines don't have a ton of aromatics. This one I noticed kind of immediately when I put my nose in the glass. And then on the palate, excellent mousse, full expression of bubbles. As soon as you put it in your mouth, it starts to explode all over again. It gives us that creamy, cushiony palate and that bubbly texture sensation. Why sparkling wines are so much fun to drink, especially with food, by the way. A great partner with something like this is panko battered shrimp, or fried pork rinds, or fried chicken. Things that have crunch to them as well are a lot of fun. It's great sushi wine, as a matter of fact, especially if you again throw in that panko crunchy bit. It's amazing stuff. Full bodied with that around the mouth feel. Once that mousse goes away, once the bubbles subside, you taste it all around your tongue with a nice bright acidity. This is interestingly enough, this does not declare a sweetness level on it. Okay, I don't know if you guys remember we talked about sweetness a while back, and about basically how the levels of unsweet that are within it. So there are a total of 8? I want to say, yeah. You start with Brut Nature, Extra Brut, and Brut, which are all three of the driest levels. Then you have extra dry and dry, which are still dry levels. So there's 5 different levels of dryness, all of which, by the way, are nearly at the undetectable level of sugar quantity in your mouth. They're all more about what little flavors are added back afterwards. So you don't perceive them as sugar. They have other flavor components. And then you have the off-dry and sweet styles, which are demi-sec and doux. But the thing is, sparkling wines, especially ones that are champagne-like this is, often have that on here. This does not. And I would put this in that dry category. It doesn't taste nearly as sharp as Brut. There's almost, because of the fruitiness of it, there is a perceived level of sweetness. But remembering the difference between sugar and fruity flavors is very important here. Still, this is delightful. $26 advertised price, $22 after you flash your little store card. So it's a $20 bottle of wine. And I think you're absolutely getting what you pay for here. I would put this up against a $40 bottle of champagne any day of the week, and I bet you'd enjoy both equally. So it doesn't always have to be about the big classics. You can color outside the lines with your wine world, and I highly encourage you to do so. So go ahead and check out the other half of Moet et Chandon. You can have just Chandon from California. Although I'm really eager to read about what their India and China groups are doing. That's definitely a go where the money is, where they're trying to establish markets. And of course, rather than paying all the cost of importing, if they're making them in country, selling them in country to those countries that have vast populations, that's an obvious business recipe for success. So, all right. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed and enjoyed visiting with you. I'm glad Betty and Mark are all happy, doing well with all their good time, with all of our power outages and craziness. Survive the weather. I hope you guys stay safe out there. It is a wild holiday season. Be safe, get home safe to your loved ones, and make sure that you enjoy those celebrations with sparkling wine. I'll be here on my side doing the same. Looking at the calendar, I will probably do a show next week, but probably not the 28th. We're celebrating a Christmas tradition by going seeing the Trans-Siberian Orchestra on the 28th, so I will not be around for the show. I will be watching laser beams and dragons, and 50% more of dragon in every scene. So, but we guys will see you next week. In fact, since next week is the beginning of winter, we'll talk about that a little bit, I think. So, until next time, guys, I have been your Wine Shark. Cheers. Now I think I have to order myself some sushi.